Gracias, muchas gracias. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Hilario and Rahul, for being here with us today. This will be an open discussion with the panelists. I will start addressing a couple of questions, 2 or 3 questions to the panel, and then if we have some time, we will open for a few minutes for Q&A. We will be covering 2 of the strategic services sectors within the global services industry that are rapidly globalizing, driven by international and traditional outsourcing advantages and the international market aspirations of the client base. So our objective today, with our time, is to learn what are the main trends globally for architecture and engineering services. And also, we would like to examine the particular strengths and challenges of Latin America as a base for regional and global ASO and ESO. So, this will be coming from the perspectives of both a very successful Latin American SME from Uruguay and from one of the leading multinational offshore IT and software development companies worldwide based in India. So let's start with architecture. And in order to introduce you to what Hilario does and basically to his company, let's start with a brief video.
The first time I tried virtual reality, I thought, this is it. This is why I got into architectural visualization. As an architect, I understand how difficult it is to communicate design to another person, to make them feel the colors, the textures and the lights. Because in order to do that, you have to go to plans and cross-sections and elevations, and a synthesis of reality that has been invented by the Greeks thousands of years ago. When you try virtual reality for the first time, you understand this is how design should be communicated to another person. And after all, how many times in your life can you experience something for the first time?
So as you may have seen in his bio and now in the video, Hilario founded Studio 4D 11 years ago. And since you have been now exporting architectural visualization services to Washington, D.C. and New York. So from your experience, how does Latin America and the Caribbean compete with Asia or Eastern Europe when it comes to outsourcing architectural services? And what do you think that is our leverage as a region for this specific industry?
Yeah, I think the time zone plays a leading role here because for some types of businesses, having a 24-hour clock, meaning you send information at the end of the working day in the East Coast, and then it gets processed and you have it by tomorrow morning. So that works for some kind of businesses, but when it comes to design, it doesn't quite work because there's a lot of hands-on by the designer. Our business is to make images from technical information. So I think the time zone makes it very easy for architects to pick up the phone at a regular office hour. They call us, like, for them it makes no difference if we are in Miami or in Montevideo or wherever we are. And have a more, say, human conversation in terms of, okay, we need to make the wall less yellow and a little bit red, and then we have an exchange. And I think the time zone is key to make that kind of exchange with the clients. So I think that's, for our specific business, that's a big leverage. And then there are other things, such as, I think there's sometimes, communication tends to be better in these working hours. And I think that is also very important. And then there's cultural differences that sometimes, that are a barrier in terms of interpreting, say, artistic comments, because, when it comes to, there's an artistic side to our work that is not measurable in terms of yes or no, So that kind of thing makes it a little bit easier, having, similar cultures. As much as I love Asian culture, I went there for my honeymoon and I was like blown away. I think there's things that to everyday work might make it easier.
Perfect, thank you, Lario. In the same, in order to introduce you to Raul and Raul's company, let's start with a small video. Rahul, as the head of Global Delivery Center Operations, Administration, Global Advocacy, and Government Affairs for HCL America, you have been responsible for the expansion of the company to the region. For example, you were telling me yesterday that you were spearheading the creation of over 700 jobs in Guadalajara, Mexico. HCL, as you may know, is the world's leading and fastest growing global engineering services provider. And recently I was reading a study from the Harvard Business Review. They found uncertainty to be a major contributing factor in driving both, engineering services outsourcing. In fact, the study mentions that engineering service providers are helping buyers to navigate both technology and demand uncertainty. Some of these uncertainties come from the explosion of the Internet of Things in industry verticals such as automotive, aerospace, medical devices, industrial equipment, and energy. So, do you believe that the infrastructure is ready to support IoT for engineering services outsourcing in Latin America?
Well, thank you. And before I start to answer your question, I would like to thank you and the L2 Outsourcing for having us on behalf of 120,000 people of HCL. You saw the video. If you have boarded a Boeing plane, we have touched your life. So that's the way we work. Now, coming to the roles and responsibility, what I do, we have been delivering IT services to all global majors, basically from US, for a long time from India. That happened since 1989 until 2007, 2008. At that point, we realized that there's a need to have some delivery presence locally. So when we started looking at some locations, so we first did that in the US, in North Carolina. And there were 4 major factors: availability of resources, incentives and grants, receptiveness of the government, the infrastructure, how the government is welcoming us. So keeping all these factors in mind, we looked at our first search out of America was in Mexico. We started our first delivery center back in 2010. And over last 5 years, we are almost 1,000 people. And we are doing services for all kind of IT-related stuff. If you be it application development, maintenance, or BPO, or infrastructure, or engineering services. Now, coming to your point, whenever we try to deliver services out of America, since India has been doing this for a long time, they have robusted the process, the standards, and the expectation from American customers is the same. So when we come to Latin countries, the expectation of high standard of delivery quality, project management, this is the first ask they have, which we initially found very difficult to find. But now the markets have matured in Guadalajara, and that's not a problem anymore. Now, looking at Costa Rica, I think I can see that there's a lot of opportunity here. We can get things done. The kind of work, what we get from the engineering services companies is testing of hardware and software. So let's say a device that has been created by Honeywell, that you can log in from here and manage their meters, electric meters, remotely. So that requires, first of all, importing those devices from here. So number one thing, government need to ensure that the import policies are well defined, very well streamlined, so that anytime there is a shipment from there, it doesn't take months to get that. So that is number one. Number two is providing the appropriate infrastructure in terms of internet bandwidth, multiple number of providers, and also some companies who have that capability to provide engineering services. So those small vendors, because we can't rely just on our services, we need to rely on other vendors too. So that is number two. Number three is efficiency management. So when you are delivering projects, you need to ensure that you are keeping up with the expectation of the customer. You cannot take long and long. So managing the time, managing the projects properly so that you are delivering that in time. So these 2-3 things are very important to ensure that we get business delivered out of here. And also, once the delivery starts for some time, that builds confidence, and then we will be able to showcase to other customers what we are doing from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rahul. Hilario, let's go back to architecture. Deloitte Global predicted last year that virtual reality will have its first $1 billion year in 2016, with about 700 million in hardware sales and the rest 1.3 billion from content services. So VR is likely to have multiple applications, both consumer and enterprise, in the longer term. You actually told me this morning that you heard a very good comment from the other speaker, an expert on VR. So how can the 2016 market explosion of virtual reality impact the architectural practice?
Well, I think as an architect, as I was saying in the video, I think the tool of virtual reality for explaining design to another person is groundbreaking. So I think there's many stages in which virtual reality can be used. One of them is the final sales from the broker to the buyer of the house, for example. And then our stage is between the architect and the developer or trying to sell the project to somebody else, even in the design stages. And I think in those design stages, there's really nothing that can compare to it. If you think about architecture, we are still using plans and sections and even some renderings, but everything is 2D. And this is technology invented like by the Romans or the Greeks, like a lot of years ago. We're still using those. So I think, and I mean, it has been great to take us to where we are now, but we owe to the geniuses of the past to continue developing our discipline. And so I think it's almost mandatory for us as architects to embrace virtual reality in order to better communicate to our clients. I think it's very difficult to really, because for example, say, I'm thinking about, say, a stone house by the river, okay? I'm sure everybody can picture an image, but is this image, each one of us is imagining the same? Well, I'm betting no. So virtual reality makes that bridge, you know? So, okay, I want a stone house by the river. Okay, so I'm an architect, I design, I show you the stone house, you see it. And in my experience, it has happened that, you know, it's very impressive when you show a project in virtual reality to a client. I mean, we don't show plans anymore. We just use plans for construction and the usual, you know, for construction, basically. But when we show it to a client, we show it in virtual reality. And it's really impressive because there's no stages of explaining the project. People just start talking straight away about, okay, I want this to be wooden, I want this wall to be higher, I want this roof to be lower. So that in that way, I think, I mean, not only this year or the next, I think there's no going back in terms of architecture and design. And in terms of retail, meaning how to sell residences or retail space or whatever, I think the problem that we have now is that the head-mounted displays are not really widespread, although PlayStation has, you know, released their headset in October, and there's major players like Oculus, which is backed by Zuckerberg, and HTC Vive, which is backed by the Chinese government. So they are major players in this race of selling headsets, virtual reality headsets to people. I think it will take some time until every household has one, but it will come. So, and I think in terms of the design process, right now, it's a great moment to start using virtual reality. And in terms of retail, it can be used in showrooms and sales centers, but it will eventually come to massive distribution, but not right now. Maybe it will take, say, 2018 or 2019.
Great. Thank you, Hilario. And Rahul, right now your company is very big, but we're reading that HCL is one of India's original IT garage startups. And now you have grown to a point that you've been able to create strategic partnerships and alliances with several Fortune 1000 firms, which help your company to outsource your solutions around the world. So what kinds of ESO opportunities are you seeing from your global clients for Latin America? And what kinds of challenges do you find in expanding your operations in the region?
Excellent question. Thanks. So, first of all, there will be two types of growth you will see. One is the normal outsourcing that used to happen. And the second one is the growing economic nationalism in the America, which will keep sending jobs to the same time zone countries, which is in LATAM countries. So two types of growth, and some studies I was reading. Costa Rica itself will have some 18.21% of growth by 2018. So a lot of new business coming. The areas where the government and the universities and together, academia as well as university, as well as the government and industry, they should together work on looking at the new technologies, which is robotics, areas of robotics. Gaming industry is flourishing because you know that 15, 20 years down the line, there'll be no work. Everything will be done by robotics. So people will tend to play games sitting at home. So that's the industry which will be growing. So gaming industry, the areas of cloud computing. So these are some of the growth areas which the government should look at. Also, it's very important to look at the curriculums that are being done in the universities, because a lot of time you will see that they're not relevant anymore. What industry wants and what university is giving, there's a big gap. So that need to be reviewed, and efforts need to be taken so that you produce exactly what is needed. So in terms of requirement, we feel that C, C++, Java, cloud computing, AWS, Amazon Web Services, gaming tools and technologies that is needed. So those will be required, as well as some of the embedded programming related work that you can see coming to this part of the world.
Perfect. Now, I will shoot a question for both of you. I was reading a book called The Innovators from Walter Isaacson, the same author of the book of Steve Jobs. And in this book, he indicates that the creators of the digital revolution, from Alan Turing, who broke German codes during World War II and published the first article for artificial intelligence, to Bill Gates, to Steve Jobs, to Larry Page, who I believe that everybody here know what they do, what kind of innovations they created. They did not work alone in a garage. Most of their innovations were collaboratively. Both of you must head teams in your companies. I believe that in HCL must be a big operation with tens or hundreds of people. And for you, Hilario, you are surrounded by designers, digital artists, developers, and even you have more experience. As you may have read on his bio, he's a former Uruguay's national rugby team. So you know about teamwork, both of you. So how important is teamwork for companies like yours? What kind of advice can you provide to the entrepreneurs and SMEs that are here today if they would like to be successful internationally?
Okay, for me, teamwork is not the only way to make innovation. I mean, it's not the best way to make innovation, it's the only way. Because if you want to really do things that are new, you need people thinking on the other side of the coin and on the other sides, like in every single possible perspective. So I think it's not a matter if you want to, you need teamwork, because you cannot, invent something out of the blue on your own. I mean, if you look at human history, it has never happened on their own. There's maybe somebody taking credit, but that doesn't mean it's on its own. So I think the only way to make innovation is with teamwork, in that sense. And also, as a small company, I think we have some restrictions that maybe big companies don't have. We have pros and cons, okay? So we have restrictions which sometimes we would like to do things that we can't. But on the other hand, those restrictions make us think more creatively and make us, focus on what we do and try to do what we do differently. So that forces us to, to have a very, a unified mindset between the small team, and a lot of people thinking about the same problem in different ways. I think that is also, an advantage of having a small company, which sometimes counterweights the problems of not having enough resources or whatever. So, and that's the way exactly which we developed virtual reality, which was for our market groundbreaking, and we developed that way with teamwork and being very constant and being very sure of what we were doing. So, and I'll pass it on to Raul.
Thanks, Eduardo. So nice question. And adding to what Hilario said, teamwork is very important. However, we take a different stance in doing this. Most of the innovations and cool work happens in the universities. So university, there are R&D labs where the university students, they are stationed there, and they keep on working on different innovation technologies. We align with the universities, and we have done that in Guadalajara. We have done this in other part of the world. So when we align with them, we ensure that if there is a need to pay for their tuition cost or something, we pay that. And we work together with those students along with our team to work on those innovations. And that innovations that comes back to our core as a IP. You know, when we invest in that, we own the IP. So that's one. We encourage people to come and work from office. You know, a lot of companies, they have moved out, say, okay, you can work from home. But we do things, we encourage, we build an environment where people come and work from office. A lot of hallway talks, when that happens, you know, creates a lot of innovation, a lot of discussion, a lot of idea comes. That is number two. Number three, we have set aside a $500 million fund for acquiring new innovations that is happening. So there is a company which has been created outside SCL, it's a different company, which looks into different smaller companies who are new startups, who are doing things in the area of healthcare, in the area of taxation, finance, and we work with them together to see how we can co-innovate, how we can work together, or even acquire those companies or fund that company till the time they are in a way they have matured enough. So these are some of the practices we follow, and you know, connecting with the university is the best thing that we have seen. I have seen companies like Google, they come and work alongside on some of the projects that we do in the NC State University in US. I think some of these areas need to be looked at here also in Costa Rica.
Very good. And now that you mention all those innovations, well, we know how fast technology has been running over the last decade, basically, and every day is even faster. So this is also a question for you. What's your counterintuitive, half-crazy prediction about the next 5 years in both of your industries? What's going to happen?
So the biggest challenge that we see today in the software industry is the automation. You know, it's good that things are getting automated and a lot of things can be done faster. But automatically when we create those technologies, those tools and techniques and go to our customer, we cannibalize our own revenue. So I was looking at one demo recently being created. So that demo is basically a tool that can run the test cases, thousands of test cases together. I hope you know we have this crowd. So thousands of test cases can be run together, and end of the test, it actually runs the patches and comes out with 5 recommendations. So these are the changes that you need to do in the software. Now imagine there were 50 guys for different teams, different applications who used to do debugging and come out with the requirements or the fix. Now this tool itself produces 5 patches and gives, you know, if you do these change, these are the side effects. So based on this, there's just 1 or 2 person required, software developer required, who will make the changes, and it can be done. You can rerun that. So you are reducing a whole bunch of team, application software maintenance team, from 100 to let's say 5 or 7. So that's happening, that's pretty close. Same thing with robotics in the area of manufacturing. So there will be tremendous improvement in the efficiency. However, we see that there'll be job loss too. Yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting. Do you want to also provide us with your?
Well, I think there are two new technologies, which is augmented reality, virtual reality, and 3D printing, that will make projects jump out of plans. Okay, so instead of waiting for the project to be built to see it in 3D, you will be able to see prototypes much earlier in the design process. So I think that will probably change the way we architects explain projects. Those 3 technologies, I think, I mean, they have, you know, their market problems, as I explained, and there are you know, issues with each one of these 3 technologies, but it's just a moment of when and how, because it's going to happen in the next 5 years, so we better be prepared for it.
Great, thank you. We're almost out of time, so I will, in order to wrap up, maybe a final comment on something that maybe the audience is interested in hearing from you, especially from a small company from Latin America and a big company internationally. So what kind of advice you will give them if they would like to sell to a big company? Tomorrow we are going to have a workshop, by the way, that's going to talk about that. But I believe that it's going to be interesting to know from you, Hilario, from your perspective, how you accomplish things and what kind of path they can find and how easy or difficult it can be for them. And then from you, Rahul, is like from a buyer, because even though you are also a provider, you are also a buyer. What are you looking, what are you seeking when you are looking for new providers in your in your company?
Well, I think short advice is, as a small company, choose your battles wisely. You know, I'm all for the entrepreneurial spirit of, you know, trusting your dreams and whatnot. But I think you have to choose your battles wisely. So you only have, you know, that amount of resources as a small company. So you have to put them where it really counts. So that would be my advice. I mean, think about what is that a company from another country needs. Think about that a lot, and then go make them an offer that is really attractive, and to the right person, in the right way, and with the right product. So that would be my advice. Choose your battles wisely.
Excellent.
Yeah, so basically, high standard of work. You know, if a lot of companies are ready to invest in Latin countries, but the only thing that comes to their mind is what about the quality of work standards. So any company who's opening their operations, they must ensure that they are producing high quality with high efficiency. I've touched upon this. Internet has opened the door and knowledge, so immense knowledge. People should be always looking out for what's happening in the industry, not just working on what they're doing, but always to look out on different areas of technology innovation that is happening in the world. Soft skill is something that is very important, so polish language skill as much as possible, because other than Spanish, English, and there are other languages also that are in demand. We keep looking for agents or customer support agents who can provide support on multiple languages, not only just English and Spanish. So those requirements keep coming. And yeah, always polish the skills. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you to both of you. Thank you for bringing your expertise from your field. And let's give them a round of applause and thank them for being here. Thanks.